If you're a business owner or a business leader and you're managing all the functions of your C-suite, subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and let's start talking about how you can make the most use of your time so that you can enjoy life and keep the dream alive. Welcome to another episode of Fractional with Chris Capone and Associates. I'm here with my good friend and colleague, Rob Kaiser. Rob is an entrepreneur, is a partner and owner of the Business Journal, and just generally good guy. And before we say anything, I really want to say thank you, Rob, for helping me start my business and introduce me to a lot of people and give me, just kind of help me get in. And so thank you, Rob. I appreciate that.
Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah. So before, the topic for today is going to be kind of, I bought a business right before the Great Recession, and you're still in business, so that's cool.
Well, thanks for not saying the other part, that I'm the dummy that bought the business right before the Great Recession.
Yeah. That was your words, not mine. But so just take a moment, introduce yourself, and kind of how you got to Wilmington, and how you got to be the publisher of the Greater Wilmington Business Journal.
Sure. So I've always been in media throughout my career as a reporter, editor. I helped start a business journal in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and never really had the ambition to own a business journal myself until I got to Fort Wayne. I helped start the business journal as editor. I became publisher, saw how the community embraced it. I thought my one insight in life is that a business journal can work in a small community like a Fort Wayne or a Wilmington. So after that Fort Wayne experience, I said, I want another Fort Wayne. And I just started looking around the country at other smaller communities, either where I could start or buy a business journal, and just happened to find out the one in Wilmington was for sale. So that was in 2007, and here I still am.
Unbelievable. So, because, when people think of entrepreneurs, like they really think it's like, oh, this guy created this technology or like started a business, but, buying a business and then having to run that business is extremely entrepreneurial. So tell us about how, the process of buying the business. I mean, that's an interesting thing just in and of itself, is putting a deal together and how to buy a business.
Yeah. I mean, first taking one step back, I initially was looking to start a business journal, but concluded there was actually less risk in buying it, in that, you buy an existing business, you have, in our case, existing readers, existing subscribers, existing advertisers. In my experience in Fort Wayne, where I wasn't the owner, but I helped get it going, I mean, that was a long time before you hit break even when you're starting from scratch. Probably have more competition because other media are very alert to what you're doing and are, trying to kill you out of the gates. Whereas, buying an existing publication that's established, people have already adjusted. You're probably not going to get a big competitive response just because there's a new owner. I just felt like that was actually less, I think people often talk about entrepreneurs and taking risks, which it definitely is, but really you're trying to minimize risks. Right. So one of the ways I felt like in minimizing risks was buying it, which, on day one meant more upfront investment, but in the long run, I think was actually less risky and proved to be successful.
Yeah. So did you hire a business broker, or how did you?
So actually in the search, I downloaded the census. I looked at, all the markets that were a little bit bigger than Fort Wayne, a little smaller than Fort Wayne, and that was kind of my target list. Looked up, was there a business journal there or not? If there was one, trying to check it out. Talked to a bunch of business brokers that specialized in newspapers to let them know I was interested if they had something like this. And that went on for, it was probably 6 months of that. And I was still working in Fort Wayne. This was just, my nights and weekends activity.
Right.
And then just dumb luck one day, I think I was on the Wall Street Journal site, and it says, you can click here to buy a business. And that took me over to Biz Buy Sell, and I start searching around, and I see this opportunity in the Southeast. I don't think it even identified Wilmington, but, reached out, found out it was a business journal. It was, what I was looking for, and then, came out to take a look at it.
So just really serendipitous, just kind of random events. I'm going to click on this link, and it takes you there. And next thing you know, it's fits the profile, I guess, of kind of exactly what you were
it fit
looking
exactly. It was, I wanted a growing market. I wanted, a place that had good business activity, but had potential for more. It was a good situation where the business was established. At that point, it was
for.
a monthly business journal, but they weren't doing much digitally. They didn't have like daily emails that we have. They didn't
Right.
have events. So there was a lot of opportunity for growth as well.
So did you just like pick up the phone and like call the owner and be like, hey, or like, how did you like, I mean, so from clicking on the link and seeing that, like, how did that play out? Like,
Yeah, I just responded to the ad.
yeah,
I think signed a non-disclosure
yeah.
agreement, got the information, fit everything I liked. Never been to Wilmington before, so got on a plane, came to Wilmington, checked it out.
Yep.
I purposely timed my visit when the chamber annual meeting was taking place,
Oh,
so I
cool.
could kind of get a sense
Yeah.
of the business community. And it was one visit, fit everything I wanted, and then we negotiated on what the price was going to be and
Yep.
how it was all going to work. But it happened fairly quick. I'm trying to remember when I guess my visit was probably in February, and I owned it in May.
Oh my gosh. So it's funny. So May 2007, I think that's basically when I moved down to Wilmington to go to UNCW. So, I was moving into the area, I was a college student at that point.
Yes,
but
you're a little younger than I am, Chris.
it's not, as I was talking, I was like, that's not what I'm trying to say by any means. But so 2007, like, it doesn't seem that long ago, but it's 2023 now, 18 years.
I was
16.
young when I bought the business.
Yes, you were. Yes, you were. But like, what a different time in terms of like the economy in 2007, social media in 2007, just
Yeah,
like
iPhone just coming out.
Yeah, digital media in general at that point. So, like you said,
Yeah, my longer phrase, by the way, is I'm the dummy that bought a newspaper right before the Great Recession. Is my full. But yeah, it has. Media was already changing a lot. It certainly has accelerated. Since 2007. I felt like though, when I was making the decision to buy a business journal, I was very consciously. I could have bought a daily newspaper. There
Right.
were plenty of them for sale.
Right.
It would have actually been a lot easier to do that. But I felt like the big trend in media was everything was going to specialty websites. Everything was going niche versus, the old days of a daily newspaper being all things to all people. That was kind of going away. And I felt like, well, starting with a business journal, and the woman, Joy Allen, who started the business journal, had also started Wilma. So I had the opportunity to already have two media brands under one roof, which creates some efficiencies.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
felt like it was a good situation.
So you buy the journal, and I'm sure you have some type of plan on what you're gonna do and how you're gonna grow it or change things, and then 2008 2009 comes around, and what happens is just kind of throw that out the window and reassess everything, or were you able to kind of stick to the initial plan you had?
It actually, in terms of you as our fractional CFO will be very happy to know, like our numbers were very on.
Yeah.
If you look at kind of the 1 year, 2 year plan of what I expected to do, although, the economy was going through a lot. But, my approach was one, get to know the community, get to know people.
Yep.
I'm not going to come in here and change a bunch of things or do things
You're all
without
fired.
having conversations. Obviously, get to know our team and grow our team.
Yeah.
But the first thing we did was expanded the business journal from being monthly to coming out every other week.
Right.
So we, expanded our production. We expanded our digital reach. We started doing the power breakfast. But, I felt like that first summer was my listening tour. I just went out, talked to a lot of business leaders, people in the community, kind of understanding where the community stood, what they would like to see from a publication like ours. And then the following February, we relaunched the business journal. We did a complete redesign. We had a lot of new features. We covered the business of healthcare. We covered tech companies. We did a lot of new things, and I think upgraded the look, upgraded the photography, upgraded the reach into the community. And then I was able to go back to the people that we had originally talked to and said, hey, is this what you're talking about? And oh, by the way, we're starting a Power Breakfast in a few months, and
Right.
we're upgrading our website and our digital outreach. So I think the community was great. I mean, it was what I was hoping for, and I would say I think a smaller community like ours disproportionately appreciates when you have a publication like ours, because in many small communities it doesn't exist.
Right.
And I think a lot of people in Wilmington are used to higher end publications, higher end events from where they came from.
Right.
They don't necessarily expect to find it in little Wilmington. And I think when they do, they're very appreciative. And of course, the people who are already here, the people who were born in Wilmington, and take pride in our business community and what it is, and the fact of just being able to bring people together.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say Wilmington is a very disconnected community just because there's a lot of new people here.
Absolutely.
And there's kind of a lot of segments of the community and different people in different parts, and we don't all necessarily always come together. So being able to host Power Breakfasts and business expos and things like that really kind of helps make connections that may not otherwise happen.
Just exactly to that point, I got connected with a gentleman who moved down here. Him and his wife moved down here from like the Philadelphia area. And we just got connected through mutual associates here in town, and we were just having a video chat. And he's like, I was asking him what type of stuff he's involved in, and he mentioned that he's really he loves going to the Biz Journal events. And he's like, what is so cool about Wilmington is that I go to the after hours event or the Power Breakfast, and there's this sense of like community and feeling where you don't get that in bigger markets, because you could be a member of like 4 different networking groups, and you go and there's like everything's even more disconnected. There's so many different groups and everybody's just there hard selling, trying to make business, But when you go to the events here, I feel like it's more just like, hey, we're having a good time, we're hanging out, we're talking, and some business will definitely come from that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think that kind of goes exactly
I think
to
the
what
culture here is, so many business people here have chosen to live here. It's almost like you're born where you're born, and sometimes you're born in a great place, and sometimes you're not. And oftentimes, like, where you go to college or your next step is like, we all chose to be here. It's kind of instant community. That's kind of like what Wilmington is and our business community is. There's also so many people, myself included, who aren't from here. So when I meet somebody who's just moved here, it's like, hey, I went through what you're going through, and let me help you connect in. And here's people to know. Here's things to get involved with. Let me know if And so I think that's just the culture of our area. Is everyone's happy to be here. People want to help people that are coming in.
Absolutely. And I remember, when I graduated college, it was like 2011, and I wanted to do big stuff, I guess. And I was like, all right, so where do I go to work in Wilmington? I want to stay here. And there were definitely some good opportunities. Unfortunately, it just wasn't like, I guess within my purview or whatever. But, fast forward to now, it's a completely different perspective. And I think, people still have this idea that, oh, it's just little Wilmington. It's, a retirement community, vacation place, there's a college there and restaurants. That's not the case. I mean, that's really not the case anymore. I mean, we've got publicly traded companies, we got big banks, software companies, life sciences. I mean, it's really a cool place to be.
Yeah, that's we have a vibrant business community, but it's not immediately obvious. I think, for someone who's just on vacation here, you'll see, the PPD building, or you'll see you'll see the Corning plant, or, you'll see certain things. But, once you're here for a little while, and I mean, a lot of people don't even, know about the Live Oak campus. That's not, you're not just, just kind of drive past that when you're on your way to the beach or something like that. So I think, once people get involved and start to see, all the little startups there are, and tech companies, and, obviously tons of lifestyle businesses and things like that. And it's, obviously it's changed in my time here. When I started, it was, no Live Oak, no Encino.
Yeah.
And Castle Branch was just a little startup
Yeah.
downtown. And, things have really grown.
PPD was like a building, and then there was absolutely nothing around
Right.
it. Like, it was just like wasteland. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah, I think PPD building actually just opened the year. I think actually when I came here, they didn't even occupy it yet. They just
wow.
started to move in there.
So going back to, you buy the business, and you talked about how, you really spent kind of the first year listening, going around meeting people. And I mean, a lot of the books, I don't know. I say I read a lot of books, but when I really think about it, I'm like, maybe a couple a year. But the book, the best business books that you read, it talks about who first, like people first, and it talks about the voice of the customer. And basically what you said was really getting to meet the people, getting to meet the team, and then going around and asking people, what they would like to see. And it's kind of like, what you said is textbook, for what was that like a planned thing? Is that, you were, well-studied businessman, or was that's just what the right thing to do was, and I didn't overanalyze it. That's what I did.
Yeah. I mean, having been in media my whole career, having helped start another business journal in another market, although very, Fort Wayne's obviously very different than Wilmington and very different dynamics and industries and how it's made up. I mean, I always go into any new business venture with, my theory
Right.
in my head or maybe written down. Here's what I think is going to work. Here's a spreadsheet business model of how I think it's going to work.
Yep.
And then in those conversations, and as I really learn and really dig in, that kind of tests my theory, before I invest in, having the paper come out 26 times a year instead of 12, and, more than doubling my printing bills and distribution bills, and
Right.
having to hire more staff and doing, all the things you need to do. So it's really, I think generally, if you're going into a business in an industry you've been in, you come in with certain assumptions, and, some are proven correct, some are proven wrong, but that's where, I think certainly things got tweaked once I got to town, once I really started having those conversations, once I really felt like I was starting to get a sense of the community, then, some things change. You make, there's certain things you're going to do differently in different communities. But, the basics of what we've done, from the business journal side has, pretty much followed what I'd expect.
What would you say, like, one of the biggest challenges that you have had to overcome in owning the business over the past 15 years?
Yeah. I mean, there, not to make light of the Great Recession, that was a big challenge. Fortunately, I feel like Wilmington got hit a little later than many other markets in terms of, things were going well here. You didn't have, you still had people coming in and you still had activity, but, it was certainly not something I had planned for. So navigating through that, I mean, the reality was some of our core advertising that, national advertisers, banks, as a big supporter advertiser, I mean, a lot of those dried up. So the fortunate thing was we had our new initiatives kind of, ready to go and rolling out. So, a lot of, really for several years, our events, our new digital properties really carried us.
Awesome.
Whereas, a traditional business journal at that time, you would kind of expect the ads in the business journal to carry you through. So, we had to be pretty quick on our feet to, be like, all right, well, if these things aren't happening, then we're going to have to create something else to make sure we're still moving forward. But we were still able to grow every year through it. We were building off a smaller base than what we are now. But it was, you had to move quick, and, I had loans, and I'm getting margin calls, and I'm getting, it was tight.
Yeah.
To find your way through.
Oh, I bet. So I was talking with a group that like an equity group. They they buy. Their goal is to buy and sell. Buy and hold businesses, sell businesses, and I kind of got into this discussion with them. And I'm like, at what point, when you're valuing a business, and you're looking at your your pro forma, and am I going to be able to cover this debt and overhead and all this stuff? Like, at what point do you just say, the numbers say this, it might not be right, but I believe in myself, or I believe in the plan that I have, that, there's one thing that's constant in life is that it's change. And, I'm just going to, we're going to do it, and things are there's going to be things that we have to overcome, and you just kind of got to roll up your sleeves and figure it out. And it sounds like you kind of had a plan that was, kind of set to help you get through that regardless. But, did you have to like accelerate, the plan of doing more digital stuff, or, trying to do things differently, or was it?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, in terms of, the model beforehand, you as a CFO hopefully will appreciate this. I mean, I took every single contract from every single advertiser, in my due diligence,
Yep.
built a spreadsheet of, history, a couple years of history, made some assumptions. Okay, how many people are going to continue? How many people are going to drop off? How many new advertisers may we get? If we take on this additional expense of expanding the publication and more printing bills and more distribution bills, and, how much more can we expect? Where can we get rates to? So, I mean, I had fairly big model built out for all of this.
I love it.
So that, to me, that's just pressure testing. Okay, are my numbers realistic? And I will always, whenever I budget, I'll always do the expense side first. And, I don't like folks that budget and it's like, okay, well, the bottom line has to be this. So let's tweak the revenue numbers, or let's tweak this or that. So I'll do the cost, I'll do the revenue, then I'll look at where it's at. So there's no,
kind of bias.
Yeah, there's nothing there. Like, I'm not shooting for a number. I just want to see if I'm very realistic on expenses, very realistic on revenue. Where is that going to put me? And then that may help decide, well, we're not doing that because that's, it's not going to make sense, or maybe let's try this idea or that idea. Yeah. So, I mean, I always operate, including in the beginning of, it's not like I did not have a 5-year plan of here's what we're going to do in the first 5 years in the Business Journal.
Right.
Some of it's just opportunistic in conversation. So one of those conversations was with Larry Clark, who was the dean of Cameron School of Business then.
Yeah, yep.
And he was, I will say, one of the first big believers. I mean, he got it. Like, first conversation, like, he's like, yep, got it. Want to support you. Put me on the Cameron School Advisory Board. Started advertising with us, and just, supported what we did. And one of the ways was they had the Entrepreneurial Awards program for a while, and it never really had a home. Like, it kind of bounced around a couple places.
Yeah.
And I said to him, I said, hey, I used to run an Entrepreneur Awards program like this in Fort Wayne. What do you think about us partnering on it? And there are a few changes I'd like to make, because it was more of a chamber awards program at that time, kind of like, companies that were good chamber members, that, were good members of the community, but they were mainly, nice lifestyle businesses. They were not your Live Oaks Encinos, or, your high growth businesses that are going to create hundreds, thousands of jobs.
Right.
So I said, why don't we shift this? Let's keep recognizing the chambers. Obviously, let's keep all the chambers, others involved who historically been involved, but let's shift the main focus to, we want to identify high growth companies, shine a spotlight on them, help them make connections, help them grow. So he was all in. I mean, with my second year here, we partnered on it, and we're still partnering with the university on the Coastal Entrepreneur Awards.
Yeah, I was. That was a great event. This is my first year being part of it. Just as a sponsor, but it was an awesome event. And just like you said, it's a way to help support businesses that are trying to grow. Gives them a little bit more exposure and shed some light on what they're doing. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
So that's the thing. It wasn't I wasn't thinking at the outset. Hey, we're gonna do the Entrepreneur Awards here. So sometimes it is just what partnerships make sense. And there's also some things we don't do, because we're not just going to replicate. If something already exists in the community, there's lots of things to do. There's lots of ideas. So somebody's already doing something, we may have looked at, and it's like, all right, well, somebody's already doing that. We'll find something else to focus on.
Yeah. So, so you've got the business journal, but you're also, involved in some other businesses as well. So how do you, tell us a little bit about some of the other businesses you're involved in, and then, how do you manage to split your time between, being part of different businesses?
Yeah. So, well, kind of part two, if we're focusing some on business sales. So, I bought the business in 2007. This will kind of eventually lead to answering your question. Several years in, I kind of thought, it'd kind of be nice to not be the only owner, or, kind of have somebody else in my shoes. And Robert Preville, who's my business partner today, we had worked on a couple things or looked at a couple of ventures before, and he's a tech guy, he's a developer, he, no media background, but, he was in several respects a very good business partner, because one, he came at it totally differently than I did, in terms of, and he's just a very good business guy, strategy guy, sales guy, and technology guy. And, media companies today, you have to be a technology company as well as being a media company. So he kind of brought the technology side to it. So in 2013, he bought half the business. And, with the idea being he would work in the business for a while, particularly on our technology side. And then eventually he would, likely do something else, or he'd already done several startups, had several successful exits. And that's what happened. He worked in the business for a couple of years. And then from our office, he started thinking through a bunch of different concepts, and eventually did a concept originally called Quipped, which is an online marketplace where businesses could rent or lease equipment. That's evolved into a business called Approve, which is more focused on the leasing side of things. So that's, the other business I'm involved in is Approve, but the way we're equal partners in both businesses. I mean, Approve has other investors as well. But basically day to day, I run the Business Journal Wilma business. He runs the Approve business. We talk most days about something, and that was really one of my goals. One of the reasons I liked business journals is its entree into a lot of things. And I knew the guy who used to own the Indianapolis Business Journal. He did the same thing. He started the Business Journal, got him involved in a lot of different ventures, different things in the community, and that that was appealing, and that's kind of how it's playing out. Like I like journalism, business, and community, and this role kind of gives me entree into all three, and and then involvement in other businesses.
Yeah, and the networking of meeting all these people, and that's really cool. So you guys you said equal partners. That's got to be an interesting, typically, you have a majority owner and you have a minority owner, or, something like that. You guys are equal partners. How does that play out in the day-to-day in the decision-making process on, strategy and other daily operational activities?
Yeah. I mean, it's worked well. I'd say that, we approach things very differently. So, we'll go at it sometimes on different things, which I don't think either of us takes personally in terms of it's just debating something out. And I would say almost always we end up at a better place than either one of us would have
on their own
individually.
Yeah.
I do think, the way it's played out where, I run my business, he runs his business, we both have interest in the other, and we don't, we'll get input from the other. Sometimes we listen to them, sometimes we don't. And, ultimately, we don't, it's my business or his business, even though the ownership is even, it's very clear who's in charge and who's going to make the decision. So I think ultimately that has worked very well, that, we have two different businesses, but, shared interests, and we can learn from each other, bounce ideas off each other. And, ultimately we're in the same shoes. We're in the same situation. So, it's great to talk to advisors, to talk to friends, to talk to consultants, but, literally having somebody who has the exact same stake in a business as you, that's a different level. Like
Yeah.
that's, the 11 o'clock at night phone call. It's like, well, probably my business consultant's not answering that call, but my business partner is.
Right. Absolutely. That's pretty. So how did you meet Robert? Were you, like, was it through him wanting to buy into the business journal, or did you guys have a
No,
relationship?
actually, it was through the Coastal Entrepreneur Awards.
No way.
So the first year we did it, when we partnered with UNCW,
Yeah.
his previous company, Global Test Supply,
Uh-huh.
was one of the winners. And I remember when he came in and did his presentation, I was like, this guy's pretty sharp.
Yeah.
And like whenever we scheduled like the first presentation meeting, I kind of knew a little bit about all the ones that are going to come in. I'm like, I know this guy will be good, and it won't be embarrassing to put him in front of the judges. And by the way, like one of the judges then was Fred Eshelman, the founder of PPD.
Yeah.
So like, I wanted to start off well. So anyways, he made a very good impression. He had a good business. But I mean, it was a number of years later. So yeah, we became friends, talked over the years, looked at some other ventures over the years. And then once he sold Global Test Supply, then it led to more serious conversations about him joining the Business Journal.
Awesome. So you were telling me a little bit about a clause that you guys have in your operating agreement, because I asked, I was like, well, you guys are 50-50 partners. If you guys don't agree on something, how does that work out? So tell us about this little deal.
So my attorney tried to talk me out of selling 50% of the business, because the obvious problem becomes we start fighting.
Yep.
There's if nobody has control, then sometimes business can come to a standstill. Nothing's getting done. So he suggested what he called the Texas shootout provision, which is if things go bad, you can't resolve anything, and you're just done, then you make an offer to buy out your business partner. But once you make that offer, you don't know if you're the buyer or the seller.
Interesting.
So if I say, all right, buy you out for $1 million, he might say, okay, I'll take it.
Yep.
Or he might say, nope, here's $1 million, you're out. So it's really an incentive to try to work things out, because, if you want out of the business or something, then you can just have a separate discussion about that.
Right.
But it's really just if things get so bad where at the point I'm just getting out of the situation, I'm either getting him out or I'm getting out, that's a way to do it. So fortunately, we've never been close to that point, but I thought that was a good thing to put in the agreement. And worst case scenario, which is, when you're doing a deal like this, you got to try to plan for worst case scenario.
Yeah, and that's things for people much smarter than me, and I'm just regurgitating, but plan for the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah.
You got to have that worst case doomsday scenario plan in place. Just that's part of business planning, life planning.
Yeah. No, and it is important to, if you're buying a business, if you're structuring a deal, to talk out the details, have a good legal agreement if it's something like this. And and I'm sure you have seen also, there's just way too many businesses just on a handshake deal. There's nothing written down, and then suddenly, either when things get really good or things get really bad, and suddenly it's there's a lot of things that are unclear as to how things are going to work.
So what would you say, like one of the, with the Business Journal and what you guys have done over, 15 years, we talked about, some of the struggles and the hardships. What would you say would be like one of your biggest successes or your proudest moment of owning the Business Journal?
Yeah. I would actually say it's Wilma.
Yeah.
So, I would say I'm the accidental owner of a women's magazine, because I really went into this wanting to own a business journal.
Right.
And then Joy Allen, who started the Business Journal in 2000, started Wilma in 2003. So I reached an agreement first to buy the Business Journal. And, then I was thinking about it. I'm looking at the team and the jobs, and I'm like, I'm going to leave a bunch of people with half a job. And like, this really does not make sense. I don't know how we're going to split this up and how, this would work. And, start then running the numbers, looking at the efficiencies. Well, I still only need one office for Business Journal Wilma.
Right.
I still only need one sales team. I still can have one editorial team, one office manager, so start putting some numbers on it, and you're like, this kind of makes sense. Not that I know anything about running a women's magazine. But so ultimately, I made an offer for Wilma as well.
Okay.
And so in some ways, Business Journal or Wilma are opposite. There's lots of business journals out there. There's lots of people to copy from, a lot of experience. We're part of a national association of business journals where we all openly share ideas and information. And Wilma is very rare. There are not many local women's magazines in markets that try to holistically address women's lives.
Right.
So careers, leadership, health, family, home. I mean, oftentimes there's like a fashion magazine or a home magazine, but there's not many magazines that try to do what Wilma does. So Wilma, we have had to make it up as we go and really try. We're not like Business Journal. We can really copy, it's not like we're the first people that have ever done a power breakfast. Like
Right.
There's lots of power breakfasts around the country.
Yeah.
We pretty much stole the logo of somebody else's power breakfast to, in terms of getting ours going.
Yeah.
But probably to answer your question, Wilma really grew a following. It's a very strong brand in the community. We started the Women to Watch Awards, which is to recognize up-and-coming women in our community. And after a while, we said, well, what would it look like is if instead of one day a year we recognize up-and-coming women, what if Wilma took on the mission to help develop more women leaders in our community, in businesses, nonprofits, government bodies, and boards of directors? Like, what would we do? So we put together a plan of, we would do these large events. We would do these smaller events, what we call the Wilma Network, where members can get together and just be able to connect and share ideas. We created the Wilma Leadership Institute, which is now 48 women that go through a 9-month program that hear from community leaders that serve as each other's peer advisory board. We have a mentor program. We have a Get on Board program to help more women get on boards of directors. And so to me, that is the most impactful thing we have done. I mean, if you look at the women who have gone through these programs, if you hear them speak at the graduation event we have each year at the Wilma Leadership Institute, in terms of, how it's changed their lives and their ambitions and the leadership roles that they're in. Actually, just Jessica Loper, who just was on the keynote at the Wilma Leadership Accelerator last week. She went through the Wilma Leadership Program several years ago as the communications director, I think actually like the assistant communications director at the county. She then became communications director, and now she's assistant county manager. And there's just, now she's on stage at the convention center in front of 350 people talking about her experiences. And there's so many stories like that.
Yep.
So I'd say that's definitely the
awesome.
biggest impact we've made.
That's so cool. And what better, there's no better advertising or I hate to say advertising or marketing, but just like proof of, hey, what we're doing is actually working. I went through this and I did this and now this is where I am, 3-5 years later.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. No, it's neat. It fits like with our mission and other things we do. And one of the things when we went out to the community and started talking to people about this idea, and we said, we need sponsors. This is, we are going to have to invest in this. This is going to, we're going to create new events. We're going to create new programs. We're going to create this institute. We went at first to a lot of the larger companies and pitched them on being founding sponsors. And we had good buy-in enough that we could move forward with it. But you need to have that type of community involvement and support to get something like that off the ground.
Very cool. Let's talk a little bit about the Biz Expo, the Business Expo. It's something that I've actually personally, I haven't been to before. I'm absolutely going to be involved in it this year, but I think that would be a cool thing to share and explain what the Biz Expo is and when that is and how you can get involved in it if you want to be a part of that.
Yeah. So this year, the event's October 5th. It's at the convention center.
Cool.
So it's the largest annual gathering of the entire business community. So we have the entire expo hall. We have more than 100 local companies in there. We have a keynote lunch that we sponsor that we work with the Swain Center at UNCW with their economic outlook program. And then we'll have 16 different seminars going on in the breakout rooms
Cool.
throughout the day. And one new component we're going to have this year, we've added a careers and talent part to the day. So from 9 to 11 in the morning, all the companies that are there, we're going to invite students from CFCC, from UNCW, from Brunswick Community College, and other people who are, looking for jobs or potentially transitioning to be able to come out and talk with local companies. And so it's, obviously one of the biggest needs of companies these days is workforce.
It's talent.
Yeah.
Right.
And so whether it's, someone who is in school and maybe becomes an intern, or they have an apprentice program, or they're making career decisions. So it's an opportunity for, companies and students, young adults, to be able to learn about. And then, again, like we talked about before, there's a lot of hidden companies in our community. There's a lot of cool jobs, a lot of things you can do, and it's just, having awareness about what those are.
Yeah. So it's like kind of a way to, it's a gathering for the local business community to, educate on, what, networking, education on businesses, connecting people. Am I kind of summarizing?
No,
that?
I mean, it is just the place to come together. So, if you're a local company and, you want to get in front of other businesses, you want to get in front of the Business Journal audience, be able to interact with them, you can have a booth at that event, just being at the keynote lunch where it's the university's economic outlook for the year. So there's a national perspective. They'll bring someone in to give a national perspective.
Oh, cool.
And then they'll have their local regional economists give perspective. So it's a good just kind of outlook on what's happening. And then through all that, we work with a number of local companies to put on seminars at the event. So you get education on a lot of different topics. So it's just a lot packed into one day, but great way to make a lot of new connections, connect with different companies, with, potential customers, suppliers, employees. So
Awesome.
all in one day. So you better make it this year.
Yeah,
Chris.
I'll be there for
All
sure.
right.
Absolutely. In our last couple minutes here, looking back on everything you've done, your successes, your failures, what would be, like if I'm someone, I want to buy a business or I want to start a business and I'm struggling to figure out, where do I start? What would be some advice or, some thought on where you should start?
Yeah. Well, one good piece of advice I got in my career was, so when I was at Chicago Tribune, I got my MBA at night, and I finished that, and I was kind of like, okay, what do I do? Do I get into consulting? Do I get into investment banking? Do I switch? That's kind of an opportunity to potentially do something different.
Right.
And I sat down with a guy who ran a consulting company, was asking him, and he said, well, you could do those things, but just realize, you've spent the past 10 years of your career in media, every day, working in this industry, understanding this industry. And, if you leave that behind, you're kind of starting fresh. So that really, kind of gave more thought to, I knew I didn't want to be a reporter my entire career. And, I wanted eventually to be in a business or, get involved in the business side. But that really made me kind of refocus and think, I like this industry. If I could find a path where, I can do what I want to do. And at that point, I still wasn't contemplating business ownership.
Right.
But that was good advice. So, probably the advice is, leverage your experience, leverage your contacts. If you've been doing something for 10, 15 years, just realize if you can go in a totally different direction. And sometimes people are fed up with what they're doing in their industry and they don't want to stay in it, then great. Obviously, you want to do something you enjoy doing, because you're going to be spending, especially if you're the business owner, you're going to be spending a lot of time doing it and worrying about it and, figuring it out.
Right.
But I think sometimes people may walk away too fast from what they know and things that are advantages in owning a business in a field where you have experience.
It's so interesting that you say that, because I'm just like looking back on my kind of career and trajectory, and you actually helped me come up with the idea on like how to write my first article and blog post and what I should write about. And basically it was like, I I always wanted to be a business owner and an entrepreneur, but then I became an accountant, right? Like, and I was, and 10 years later, I'm like, I'm still, I've gotten into more strategy and operations and running businesses, not just, doing the accounting, and just it's somehow kind of turned into, okay, so now I have a bookkeeping and fractional CFO business, and that's what I was educated on. That's what my experience is. But now that I'm in the spot where I'm at, I get to do a lot more of the stuff that I like to do, like this, and networking and helping people solve problems, not just balancing the balance sheet. Hopefully that balances and debits and credits and all that good
Yeah.
stuff. So
Well, that's, I think, the other thing is, when you get, sometimes it is just making the decision that, hey, I'm going to do this, and it's never going to be perfect. If only the perfect opportunity would come. If I
Right.
had the perfect idea.
Right.
I mean, you should give, a lot of thought and run the numbers, and, it is, for most people, a very big risk to do it. But at some point, you got to jump off the cliff. And the reality is, very rarely are you going to have some blinding epiphany that's going to lead to some unbelievable business.
Yeah.
Usually it's just you're in a business, you hear what customers need, you understand your market, and you iterate and you improve, and you over time add things. So if you identified, well, companies need bookkeeping help.
Yeah.
And probably had you never started your fractional CFO business, you may have not talked to enough people to realize, well, here's a market need, and
Yeah.
but once you're in the space, then you can start
You
to
learn a lot
address
more.
it.
Yeah. So, where can, just as we wrap up here, if I'm, if I want to get involved with the Biz Journal or Wilma, or if I, want to get more involved with the local business community, where can I find you? Where can I find the Biz Journal? How do I get subscribed, for example?
Yeah. So I would, for a business journal, go to wilmingtonbiz.com.
Cool.
Definitely, either sign up and subscribe, or at least sign up for our daily emails that are free. That'll keep you in the loop as to what's happening day to day. You'll get all the alerts about our events coming up. Follow us on social media. And then same thing with Wilma. It's wilmamag.com.
Cool.
Sign up for emails. That'll get you involved in everything.
Awesome. Well, Rob, thank you very much for joining us,
Mm-hmm.
and thank you for everything that you've helped me with over the past year or so, getting my business started, and it's just been a pleasure to have you on.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.